Well, why don't we go ahead and get started so we can be done in an efficient amount of time? So we'll turn to the agenda, and the first item on the agenda is a call to order, welcome, and roll call. And I believe that there's two student trustees here tonight, and maybe and Ibby from Sealy will be here as well. And then we'll have, Michael Beers isn't here, but he may be coming late, but other than that, I think we have all other trustees here. So with that, we will turn to item number 3, which is to review, revise, and approve the agenda, or I'm sorry, Pledge of Allegiance, sorry. So if we can stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now we'll turn to reviewing, revising, and approving the agenda. Are there any requests from trustees to change the order of items as they appear on the agenda or to otherwise revise it? See no requests.
No, the connection.
Are we talking about, is this,
No, she's just trying to go set the computer up.
okay. So no revisions to the agenda. So now we move on to item number 4, which is to approve the minutes from the January 23rd, 2018 board meeting. And let me turn to page 4. Are there any corrections to those minutes?
It's just a miss.
Sure.
Name. It doesn't.
Yep, no, let's correct it. So if you can grab a microphone.
Yes, just in the early start bus study, the public comment person, I just happen to know that her name is misspelled. It's Dixon.
Okay, let me grab that.
Item 8-2.
And her first name ends with IE.
It does actually.
Okay, and so what page is that on, just for
Sorry,
reference?
on page 3 of the minutes, page 6 of our agenda.
Oh, 3 of the minutes, okay.
It's the public comment piece.
Okay, Jenny Dixon with an X. Okay, and then I had one, which I was trying to catch if I can find it where it is. But if we can do a word search, Megan is, our board counsel is referred to as Mrs., and she isn't a Mrs., she's a Miss. So if we can just change the MRS to MS, and I will let you know, Lenora, where that is, but I just happened to catch that somewhere in the minutes, and it's just not popping out right ahead.
See it in the bus route.
Yeah, I think so. So with those corrections, are there any other corrections to the minutes other than those minor ones? Seeing none, then is there a motion to approve minutes from the regular meeting from January 23rd, 2018? Moved by trustee Newbold. Is there a second? Seconded by trustee Smith. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the regular meeting of January 23rd, please indicate by raising your hand. And that's unanimous as to all trustees present. Now we move on to 5A, which is public comment concerning non-agenda items. And as I've indicated in the past, this is a time where anyone who wants to bring anything to the attention of the trustee and the district that has to do with items that we won't be discussing tonight, it's a time where you can let us know that you have concerns, you have positive thoughts, you have things you'd like to bring to our attention, so that if it needs further attention, we can add it as an agenda item and discuss it further. But since it isn't listed as an agenda item, and therefore under the Open Meetings Act, we can't act and make any decisions on it, it won't be discussed by the trustees, but we would love to hear from you. And we'd ask if anyone represents an organization, identify the organization. If you have an unusual spelling of your name, please spell either your first or last name, and try to limit your comments to about 3 minutes. And then there's a little red button to turn on because we are being recorded. So anyone with public comment on non-agenda items?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. My name is Elizabeth Ettinger. I'm the executive director of the Missoula Education Foundation. We brought a visual aid. And this is Michelle Gray, one of our wonderful board members at the Missoula Education Foundation. We are really just here tonight to invite you all to our Show Our Schools Some Love event that's happening tomorrow at noon at the Administration Building on 6th Street. This event was sort of formulated in response to, I think, those of us in the community who are really interested in supporting our schools, but have also been hearing about budget cuts and other negative things happening, and really wanted to come up with a way to support in a visible way. So we thought Valentine's Day would be appropriate to do that. Tomorrow at noon, Mark Thane will be pulling 4 schools at random from a hat. Each of those schools will receive $750 from the foundation for a total of $3,000 to go to field trips. This will be being covered by ABC News for their nightly news program. And we will also be streaming it to our Facebook page and doing a Facebook Live event. Blackfoot Communications will also be awarding a $5,000 check to the Missoula Education Foundation for, I have to get this right, Inspiring Innovation Grants, which will eventually be passed on to the school district for classroom projects as a part of our work. Let's see, am I missing anything? I think that's it, but I really just wanted to issue an invitation to you all. We are just so proud to be in support of our schools. It's our exclusive purpose at the Missoula Education Foundation. We really are your foundation, and that's our sole mission directive. And so we love our schools, and happy Valentine's Day. And I have little cards. These are copies of what we're going to be handing out tomorrow at the admin building, but I also have some cards for you.
Any other public comment on non-agenda items? Well, thanks. Seeing none, then we'll continue on the agenda, which is 6A, student trustee reports.
Good evening, everyone. Sentinel has had so many new and diverse activities going on throughout the halls, from students performing in poetry contests and plays to cheering in the bleachers for our sports teams. There's truly no slowing our school down. On Monday, January 29th, Sentinel students participated in a school-wide competition for poetry out loud. Each student had to memorize and recite 2 poems. Zach Wayland placed first, Peyton Shermer and Ethan Saylor tied for second place, and Jordan Amaya placed 4th. All 4 of these students will compete in the regional Poetry Out Loud competition that happened on February 7th in Missoula. The Sentinel Library is planning an author visit with Ben Michelson, who's written favorites such as Touching Bear, Our Spirit Bear, and Petey. He will give 2 presentations, one to the Sentinel Special Education English classes and one to just the freshman class. The title of his presentation is Finding the Heart of the Story, and he will use his personal story to discuss overcoming adversity, dealing with bullying, and finding motivation. The Sentinel Theater Department participated in the Montana State Thespian Festival on February 2nd and 3rd at the University of Montana. Senior Renee Caldor won a $500 scholarship, and junior Dylan Sando received an Outstanding Performance Award. So congratulations to both for their amazing accomplishments. At the beginning of this month, 39 Sentinel students competed in the AA Speech and Debate tournament in Great Falls. The team as a whole took 5th place, with many members placing in the top 16. Maddie Braun took 2nd, and Chris Malcolmson took 3rd in legislative debate. Cade Heddle took 2nd in original oratory, and Cade Heddle took 2nd in original oratory. The team competed in Helena to qualify for nationals this past weekend, where 4 overall qualified, with 2 kind of step-in candidates as well. The team also accepted the Congress Award for Best Congressional Debate as a school, and Chris Malcolmson won the Montana State Speech and Debate Association Student of the Year Award. So the team just wanted to thank MCPS and the school district for all the support once again this season. Sentinel's DECA chapter just returned from their state career development conference held at Fairmont Hot Springs this afternoon. This year, 111 members competed, with 48 members qualifying for the International Career Development Conference, making this year one of Sentinel DECA's most successful. Seniors Jake Treese and Riley Nielsen won scholarships of $1,000 after a strenuous application and selection process, so we're very proud of them. There were several members who also qualified for nationals in 2 events, and Jake Treese, Jamie Seifert, Marina Gray, and Emma Skousen qualified in 3 events. So those who qualified will make a trip down to Atlanta, Georgia for nationals at the end of April. On our athletic side, our wrestlers went to Billings this last weekend for the state tournament. This year they qualified 20 out of 26 total, which is the most in the entire state to go. Swimming also went to their state meet in Great Falls, where the girls' team took 3rd. Both basketball teams played crosstown rival Hellgate this Saturday, and both came out with a win. Something a little new to Sentinel is the installment of the LEAD dynamic plaque. Science teacher and Eco Club advisor Ben Cummins has taken all the steps to install this new technology in our school. So the LEAD plaque will look at the health of our school using different characteristics like water and electricity use, waste, transportation, and human experience. So this data will give us a baseline data for the Eco Club to push new initiatives such as eco-certified classrooms, priority parking for carpooling, and recycling stations. All of these coincide with MCPS's new Zero Waste Initiative program, and last week during homeroom meetings, students were asked to participate in the survey to collect the human and transportation measures. So all of Sentinel is excited to be involved in this new and unique process, and thank you.
For Big Sky, for the academics, recently the Big Sky PE department and students took a trip to Discovery. There were 80 kids that went. The Health Science Academy has already filled up with 85 incoming 8th graders for next year. And the Health Science Academy freshmen had the opportunity to become first aid or CPR certified through the American Heart Association, and the training took place during the school day. Also, 50 Health Science Academy juniors had their job shadows on February 7th, ranging from between February 7th and 17th, and there were over 17 different job sites. For athletics, speech and debate, there were 33 varsity kids that competed at state, 16 semifinalists, 4 finalists, and 2 students were named to the all-state team, and Big Sky team overall named top 10 in Montana. For wrestling, we had 2 6th-place finishers, 2 3rd-place finishers, and 1 2nd-place finisher. And for swimming, we had 1 6th-place finisher in the 50 freestyle. Also, several Big Sky students participated in the Winter Special Olympics, and several Big Sky special education teachers went as coaches and chaperones. For the arts, for the thespian convention, a Big Sky senior won awards for Best Comedy and Best Student-Directed Play with her play, That's Not How I Remember It. 1 student won an Outstanding Acting Award. 2 students won technical scholarships to the University of Montana. Another student won $1,000 scholarships. 2 more students won $500 scholarships, and 1 student won a first place in the Death by competition. The annual MCPS Jab collaboration concert with Big Sky and Sentinel just took place on February 1st, and the annual citywide poetry slam will be put on by Airy Big Sky February 17th at 5:30 at the Public House, and the annual choir dessert show is being held this Friday at 7 o'clock at Big Sky. In other news, the student government at Big Sky recently put on a dodgeball tournament that had over 10 teams from all the Missoula schools, and we plan on putting on another one in the spring, hopefully. And next week is the annual Diversity Week. Joe Stone, a local filmmaker, is our main speaker at our assembly on Tuesday, and the rest of the week will be filled with feature speakers, Big Sky documentary films, and activities to promote diversity and open-mindedness. And finally, Big Sky Sun Journal hosted a 1K and 5K fun run this past Saturday, the 10th, to raise money for journalism students to attend the National Journalism Convention.
Well, first and foremost, I suppose an apology for my lengthy absence is appropriate. I've had a string of internal and external factors which have kept me from these meetings as well as from school at certain points, but I seem to be here, and I think that I'll be able to attend these meetings until the end of the year. And I would like to apologize again for my tardiness. Yeah, I thought so too. I was like, oh, I hope somebody has public comment, or I hope they take forever or something. But luckily, I got here right in the nick of time. That was completely unintended. I remembered these meetings being at 6:30 for some odd reason. Then I was like, wait, that doesn't sound right. Then I had to look at my previous emails and, well, saw that it was 6. And, well, here I am. Okay, so either way, over at Willard, we are coming to the conclusion of our second trimester, which is going to end on March 2nd. And with it, bringing a brand new group of students who will meet the MCPS requirements of graduation, who will depart the school to return only for the formal graduation in June, as is tradition with every trimester. And considering it's the beginning of a new trimester just after that, we will also be getting in a string of new students from other schools, which have been deemed alternative. On Friday this week, 15 students are going to be heading on a ski trip to Sealy as a program with Flagship, which they seem pretty excited for, given that the students were not going as a class field trip, but instead all signed up personally. Student Senate has been continuing to work with staff in the journey of continuing to try and make Willard a better place for everyone alike, and the area surrounding Willard as well. Recently, there was a rather large clothing drive over at Willard in which an anonymous donor donated a massive amount of new clothing, from which each student was allowed to choose 3 articles for themselves, which was a rather beautiful flex of charity. Student Senate also has an event planned in May, which is to be titled To Be United, which is supposed to be an informal substitute for prom, considering that Willard has never had a prom, and the details of which are still being worked out. It won't be like a prom. Instead, they're thinking perhaps a game night, movie night, food, etc. Just a general get-together for the students and a fun little thing to attend on a Friday night. Our student counselor intern, Joey's internship, expired in December, which broke quite a few hearts, considering that his supreme emotional intelligence really helped a lot of students understand themselves and their situations in a far more intelligent and objective sort of way. People from the construction company working on the new school have been coming into the math classes and discussing the process of its construction with students on numerous occasions, in an attempt to give the students a maximization of what they can take away from the situation of it being building. Yes, that sounds right. Of it being built from the ground up just a few yards away from them. And lastly, Willard recently hosted a pretty standard open house. There was food. It was pretty sick. And that's all I have.
Hi.
Hi, Ibby, it's Julie. Are you ready to give your report?
Yep, I'm all set.
Okay, go for it. You're live.
All right, so at Sealy Swan, we had district basketball tournaments this weekend. Both girls and boys basketball teams are prepping for the final push in tournaments. The girls are 11 and 7 going in third seed against the 6th seed Victor on Thursday. The boys went undefeated in conference play during the regular season, claiming the first seed. They have a first round bye into the semifinal game on Friday against the winner of Valley Christian and Victor. So that's basketball. We also had 4 students go to an indoor track meet in Bozeman last weekend where they competed. And then outside of sports somewhat is Student Council is doing a pep rally for the basketball teams going to districts tomorrow afternoon, and the Leo's Club will be doing some ice cream for all the students right before that. Leo's Club is also selling candy grams for all the students around the school so they can send them to their friends. And then the last thing is we had a ski trip back on January 26th. And several students got to go on that to Discovery. We've got another one planned for March 3rd, and that's all thanks to a $1,000 donation by Sealy Lake Rocks to the outdoor program at the high school. And that's all I've got.
Thanks, Zibby. Thanks for being there.
Thanks, Zibby. Bye-bye.
B, thank you, 6B. And so I don't know, Mark, if you want to introduce Carol or if I should just zoom into Carol. So,
Why don't we zoom into Carol?
okay, so Carol Ewing, who is going to give us a report on the student health update. And so I know you've got a team with you, so I'll let you do introductions in whatever manner you think's appropriate.
Okay, well, come on up, everyone. And I just want everyone to know that I do have dental floss in my pocket, so if Amanda goes into labor, I can deliver the baby.
I have a I prefer the nurse.
Yeah, oh. So, all right, well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for inviting us here to share what we've been doing in the past year. We really do have a dedicated group of community members that have really supported our school and helping make things for our students healthier and really with a focus on increasing academic achievement. So we'll just start out with a little history. We'll see if my clicker works this far away. Mark will be my clicker. Thanks, Mark. Oh, that works. So just a quick history of how we came to be. We started out under when Graduation Matter started in Missoula, under the executive committee created the Student Wellness Council because they recognized that in order to have students graduate, they really needed to focus on physical, behavior, nutrition, and personal health, so the whole child. So now you can click, Mark. But we don't really have our Graduation Matters Executive Committee anymore, and so it's really what's left of Graduation Matters. And what we do is we have a leadership team that meets monthly, and then we have the physical activity work group, the behavior health work group, the nutrition work group, and the personal health work group that also meet monthly to move their agendas forward. And this is just, you can go through that one. We don't need to look at that. So I'm going to just start talking about the behavior health. So Mark, you can click again. So we've set up our slides just kind of with a brief why we're doing what we do, and then what we've done, and then next steps is basically the format. So really, this last year we focused on suicide prevention, and why we're doing that is because it's the second leading cause of death for students and young people among 15 and 24. They've increased more than 200% since 1950. And that we know from our own surveys that we do in our classrooms and from talking with students that we have students that have attempted suicide in the classroom or are contemplating it. And that most adolescent suicide attempts are precipitated by interpersonal conflicts. So what we really are trying to do is take a preventative approach. So this is just a quick look at Montana, and I always kind of want to talk about this just quickly. If you can see that where the youth of 15 to 24 they're a significant number, but also just keeping in mind that the highest suicide rate is among men between 55 and 64, and just kind of being aware that that's a population that's at risk and that we all can help prevent suicide, and being aware if we're hearing that someone's depressed or talking about ending their life. So So what we've done this year so far is we've developed our district procedures for suicide assessment and intervention. So we have district-wide forms that all of our counselors and mental health professionals are using if a student is referred to them for suicide. We've trained all MCPS staff in question, persuade, refer, which is just a gatekeeper training for what to do if you know of someone who is contemplating suicide or and you're able to recognize the signs of suicide. And we've also just started really implementing signs of suicide, where we're teaching that in 6th through 10th grade in our high schools. And that really helps students actually recognize signs of suicide in their friends, or also recognize if they're feeling depressed and what the signs of depression are, and how to seek help for either their friends or themselves if they're feeling depressed. And another thing that we did this year is we screened all 7th through 10th graders for depression. And then for students that came out, we referred them on and provided support for them. So our next steps are really to go downstream to kindergarten through 2nd grade and really and start implementing the good behavior game. And what the research has found is the research is really clear that it increases academic achievement, it reduces suicidality and substance abuse for lifetime for students, it reduces teacher stress and burnout, which is great. It reduces special ed referrals and childhood psychiatric disorders and a whole bunch of other things, but it's just really making sure that students starting in K through 2 get off at the right start. So now Mark is rushing me through physical activity.
Okay.
And this is Lisa Dvorak with Let's Move Missoula.
Hello, and I'm here today also with Mary McCourt from Let's Move. I can't move then. So we chair the Graduation Matters Physical Activity Team, and our work is focused on ensuring that MCPS students have access to 60 minutes of physical activity each and every day. And why is this so important? Well, we know that physical activity is a critical piece in both preventing health risks and the mental and emotional toll associated with childhood obesity, and it's really an important piece in, it's tied closely to academic performance. And so the Missoula City County Health Department has been conducting 3rd grade body mass index surveillance for the last 8 years. BMI is used as a way to keep a pulse on population health, and we're very fortunate that MCPS lets us come into the school and collect this data, because it really sort of allows us to make decisions in our work. And so you can see the trend here, and what we found last year was that, you can't read the numbers from that far away, but 23.5% of Missoula County 3rd graders are overweight or obese, and of that 23.5%, 11.4 are obese, so about 1 in 4 kids are not getting enough physical activity or access to quality nutrition on a regular basis to be the healthiest students that they can be. And MCPS data mirrors the county data pretty closely, so this is a pretty accurate number for that. Next slide. But those numbers are really just an average, and when we drill down a little bit deeper, we see that there is a significant disparity between our high-well schools and our low-well schools. So when we combine 2 of our high-well schools, 20% of 3rd grade boys are overweight or obese, so 1 in 5. And then we compare that to 44% of 3rd grade boys at 2 of our low-well schools, 1 in 2. And that's a significant difference. Make sure I'm not missing anything. So yeah, this distinction just goes back to it's important because we're trying to ensure that children have high quality of life later on in life and are able to succeed academically in the classroom. So we know that physical activity is proven to increase student health and academic performance. This research here was done by Dr. Stephen Gaskell, former physical activity chair of this committee and professor at the University of Montana, and he looked specifically at MPS students, and what he found we're looking at here is comparing the highest physical activity quartile with the lowest physical activity quartile and their corresponding GPAs. So the red beams show our most active kids, and the yellow beams show the least active kids, and in 6th grade the difference in their GPA is not a whole lot, 0.2. But as children progress through middle school and into high school, that difference widens. So by 12th grade, our most active kids have an average GPA of 3.6, and our least active kids have an average GPA of 2.4. And I'll just add really quickly here that it's important for obvious reasons, but it really speaks to the importance of ensuring access to the 60 minutes of physical activity from a young age, so children can develop healthy habits towards physical activity and succeed academically. For our children that can't afford to pay to play, the physical activity in school might be their only opportunity throughout any given day or week. So this slide shows the physical activity benefits associated are connected to neurocognitive function. So what you're looking at is these brains light up when the children are physically active. And so in the orange box and the green box, it was a study done on 50 kids that all took a computer test. And then 25 of them were separated into an after-school program for 9 months, and 25 were waitlisted or just went home. And then 9 months later, after this physical activity program for half of them, they came back, took the same test, and the kids that were enrolled in the program had higher test scores, and the kids that just went home actually had lower test scores. And then similarly, in the purple box, we see the difference in brain activation after sitting quietly for 20 minutes compared with 20 minutes of walking. And so thinking about where a kid might get 20 minutes of physical activity during the school day, it's like recess, walking or biking to school, playing on the playground before school, which leads me to my next slide. How are we incorporating the 60 minutes of physical activity into the school day? And so with our Graduation Matters team, we utilize the Let's Move Missoula Active Schools recipe. So in an ideal day for a kid to have access to 60 minutes, we have to build it in before, during, and after. And so ideally, a child will be walking or biking to school, and we have a Walking Wednesday program at Chief Charla that's made possible through Missoula Federal Credit Union, and then we do a number of safe routes to school promotions at some of our key schools. And then let's say a kid can't bike or walk to school, well, we're going to encourage them to show up to school a little bit earlier and participate in Morning Move, which is our Let's Move Missoula program that's basically recess before the bell. And so kids come, Parks and Rec staff sponsors it, and it's made possible all again through Missoula Federal Credit Union and United Way of Missoula County. And Morning Move is happening at Hawthorne, Russell, Franklin, and will be launching at Lowell in a couple of weeks. And the principals love it, the teachers love it, and the kids love it because kids are eager to come to school, and they've really noticed a decrease in some behavior management, and the kids' brains again are just focused, turned on, ready to learn. And then active brain break, so we have been doing trainings with MCPS staff for the last couple years, and what we find is that teachers who go through our brain break training, 80% of them start using it daily. And brain breaks, I guess I should step back a moment, but brain breaks are for every hour to 90 minutes of instruction, getting kids up and moving for even just a couple of minutes, whether it be watching a video, running in place, jump roping, and before I hand it over to Amanda, I'm going to do a brain break with all of you. So, and then active recess. So a kid has walked or biked to school, done Morning Move, done brain breaks throughout the class setting, and then ideally active recess, getting all kids engaged so kids aren't sitting out, but really utilizing that time to play and be active, and then incorporating physical activity into our after-school programs. So with that, I want, if you can opt out, self-select, but if everyone would like to stand up for a moment. This brain break is appropriate for like high school students and also meeting settings. And what we're gonna do is I want everyone to think of something really positive today that happened to you or that you accomplished. And we're gonna channel that positive energy into our breathing and movement. And so let's take a deep breath up. And then bring your hands down and give yourself a little, scalp massage. And then bring them up one more time, and you can bend over, releasing that breath. Touching your toes, wiggling your toes, slowly rolling up. Doing a couple of arm circles, whatever feels good. Just really channeling that positive energy, whatever you accomplished, into the 10 spots. And then end with a neck shrug. And give yourself a pat on the back. So the kiddos in elementary school will be like running in place and dancing and getting their wiggles out, but this seemed more appropriate for here. So, thank you.
So next up to present nutrition is Amanda Cahill.
Hello, nice to be talking with you guys again. I know we were here a couple years ago, so always fun to update everyone on what we're up to. I am Amanda Cahill. I work for the American Heart Association, and then I volunteer in a variety of ways with MCPS, and this is one of those pieces that I love. So next slide. Okay, seems a pretty obvious work group, right? We want to improve the nutrition of our students, and why do we want to do that? It means better academic success, healthy weight control, healthier lives, better learners, and then consistency between education that they receive and the actual food that they receive throughout the school day. Next, thanks. I like to talk a little bit about the latest research of having such a wealthy country where we have a lot of food options and a lot of food, and being overfed, undernourished. And so, we hear a lot about BMI issues. We hear a lot about needing to move so much. And so, the USDA and the federal government tried to combat this a little bit through the Healthy Hunger-Free Kid Act. And I think most of you are probably aware of that. That came out several years ago, and I know it's been, at times very contentious because it's this big law that tells us what we should give kids in our schools. And the more I've worked around this issue for the last 5 years, I've really come to appreciate the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act because it was set up with really good guidelines, science, and reasons. But it's been a little bit of a struggle, and so this is another time that I think it's really nice to say thank you to all of you, and especially Mark Thane, because the energy around nutrition in schools has really changed. So 4 years ago, I became a part of the nutrition work group, and at that time, most of the people on the nutrition work group said, we hate this thing and we don't want to make any of these changes, and what are we going to do about this federal law, and how are we going to get around this? And, a lot of us in the room were like, well, we're not. We're going to, take the right path and make sure our kids are healthier. And there's really been a shift around that. Ed and Stacy from the food service program have been incredible. They've really revamped recipes for the breakfast and lunch program to make them healthier. We've seen a huge shift in our school stores, what's sold on campus. All sorts of just really a massive change of culture around how much we care about this issue, and how we're not going to anymore just say, hey, it's okay, whatever they eat is whatever they eat, we're just here to teach them, right? No, it goes hand in hand. You don't, give Mountain Dews and then expect kids to sit still and learn about science. It doesn't make any sense. So we're really glad to have had the support of the trustees and the ERDs and Mark. So just want to give that a little attention. We specifically have been looking at sugar sweetened beverages lately. They're known to have some really negative effects on your memory, and so we do a little extra work around that when we go out and survey the schools, which I'll talk about in a sec. Go ahead, Mark. We do a lot of things. There's a lot of pieces to nutrition work group. The biggest one you've probably heard about are the Smart Snack Compliance Surveys. So we go around to every middle and high school. We look at the school stores. We're very unpopular, so we try to be extra nice. I should go do it now while I'm pregnant and people feel bad for me. So then we provide feedback on an assessment of how they did. We talk to the principal. We frequently talk to the folks who run the school stores, and everyone truly is pretty gracious and wonderful, but I don't think we're their favorite. And then we offer coaching and resources and lists of, here's some compliant foods, here's some things that you're selling that aren't actually very healthy. Let's look at, some alternatives. We kind of walk people through what are other ideas. We talk a lot about sugar in the brain. So Mary McCourt and Rebecca Morley have gone through this great education, and that now they provide an education for teachers around sugar in the brain and how it affects kids. And then we look at hunger issues in Missoula, so that's another really big thing for us that we wanted to focus on is not just feeding kids who have food insecurity, but feeding them well and making sure that the snack packs or whatever we provide them as a hunger prevention measure is healthy as well. So, thanks. And you'll notice this does not have our updated compliance numbers for this year. A lot of the schools have not been finished for this year, but I do have a couple numbers that I brought with us. Big Sky, we're at about 75%. Hellgate is at about 82. Sealy Swan is at about a 98%. And then, we're still, the middle schools are doing so great, we almost feel like we don't need to survey them again, but we will be looking at Sentinel and Willard again. And, it's kind of hard to even list out the numbers because it seems like there's been a backslide on a couple schools. And while that's true, a lot of it comes from good intentions. So teachers or people who run the school stores thinking, oh, I'm going to make some healthy changes and bring in some packs of nuts. Well, those packs of nuts are maybe over the calorie restriction under the actual law. So it's just a learning curve, and the schools have really made amazing progress. So don't leave here thinking that there's an issue. So our next steps are just to continue to support the schools, to give resources. We really like to focus on these food insecurity issues, and one way that we've seen this year some real progress is providing breakfast in the classroom. And I hope most of you are pretty familiar with that issue, or that idea, but the idea of feeding kids after the bell, because if they have the choice to stay out and play and do awesome morning move or come in and eat, a lot of times they're going to choose to play. And so providing breakfast after the bell kind of evens the playing field and make sure every kid has a healthy start to their day. And then we're going to continue to provide our education on sugar in the brain and promote non-food rewards and healthy classroom options. So take-home message for you guys: better nutrition, better learners. Thank you for your support. We can support our schools a lot with this volunteer group that we have, but ultimately I think what we will be looking, and what we've discussed with leadership, is to update the policy around nutrition in our schools and around wellness in general. So I don't know if we're going to talk much about that today, but we are putting a plan in place to kind of have a comprehensive wellness policy to work up for you guys to review one of these days. So that's all from me. And I'll turn over to Linda Simon.
I'm Linda Simon. I'm the Health Services Supervisor. Oh, something just happened. I guess this does work. Could you, just bring me back to the other way there. There we go. Yeah, I just accidentally touched this. So I'm the chair of the Personnel Health Committee, and we have a diverse group and a lot of community members and medical providers, and we chose over a year ago to start looking at our concussion procedures, which are primarily an administrative procedure. The reason we wanted to update this is there has been quite a bit of new research and new medical recommendations around concussion. A couple highlights from those are the advice to rest for a concussion is still there, but also excessive rest can actually delay recovery. So the idea that you don't rest for a week or two and then come back to school, but you actually rest for a day or two, and as you start getting better, you start moving and incorporating activity. We get into that activity again that helps the brain. Full recovery is promoted with incremental increases of activity and providing appropriate adjustments. So what that means is you recover quicker if you have incremental increases in your physical activity, your cognitive activity, and then also that adjustments are made, whether it's in your day at home or your day at school, adjustments are made based on your symptoms, and different people have different symptoms. We wanted to support a concept of return to learn protocol. So I'm going to go back, just give you a little history. Our current procedures are primarily a return to play kind of thing for student athletes. And they were actually put in about a year before the law came through, and the law that is there now
which was just updated last spring, has to do with student athletes. And what we wanted to look at was more of a PK-12 concept and not just student athletes. There's a lot of kids that come to school with a concussion over the weekend from whether it's a motor vehicle accident or a skiing accident or they hit heads on the playground. It's actually pretty common. And the other return to learn protocols, we wanted to have the symptom-based adjustments for any recently concussed student. And so kind of a response to intervention concept where all students with concussions get certain adjustments in their day based on symptoms, and then if they're longer, they would get more. If they're longer, they may be getting a 504 plan. We would reserve intensive management of 504s for the small percentage of concussed students with protracted recovery. So 80 to 90% of students recover in 3 to 4 weeks. And so clearly they don't need a 504 to get just common classroom accommodations. And we wanted to increase knowledge of staff, of parents, of perhaps even the medical community, of everybody about concussions and increase the chains of communication as well. So I'm going to give you an example. So 6th grade Dustin comes to school on Monday. He had a concussion over the weekend from skateboarding. His mom and dad really didn't know what to do. They may or may not have looked at our website, but there's nothing on the website about concussions for parents now. So they don't really know what to do, but by the first period class, the teacher figures out something's wrong with him. And they kind of do the best they can. There's not a lot of communication. Maybe the teacher doesn't know to talk to the school nurse doesn't know how to talk to the parents don't know to get any notes from healthcare providers. And so he has kind of a haphazard return. He might start the first day but go back home, and then he starts again, and then he goes back home, and then he's out for 3 days, and it's just kind of all over the place. And so things aren't going well, so we do a 504 plan on the second week, and he's completely better by week 4. And then we meet next year to revise or stop that 504 plan that started last year. So now what we're hoping to do is that for Dustin, he was concussed over the weekend, but the teacher knew that there was a protocol in place, or the parent looked on the website and knew there was a protocol in place, and people started communicating and sharing information. Here's a protocol, here's our return to learn protocol, here's a form for you to take to your healthcare provider. Let's do the appropriate adjustments. We would use an improved, there's a wonderful symptom wheel that's made for teachers, and concussion symptoms tend to happen in 4 different domains, and that would be cognitive, physical, emotional, and then sleep and energy. And so the adjustments are really based on those types of symptoms, and not everybody needs everything. So we all know the return to learn protocol, and Dustin recovers hopefully a little sooner than he would have, and it would have been a smoother recovery and smoother school entry. So in summary, we're updating the procedures to incorporate current evidence-based practice, increase communication and concussion education, increase uniformity, and promote a smoother recovery with return to learn procedures. And I think that's, our next steps would be continue to revise the procedures, including the evidence-based return to learn protocol, updated communication tools. So where we are with that is pretty much the 3rd draft has been reviewed by school nurses, athletic trainers, athletic directors, parents, a few teachers who had kids who had concussions, and healthcare providers, a handful of healthcare providers I shared this with and responded, and then it'll be going to administration. So I'm hoping that things will be in place by June on the website and using the forms and ready to go next September. Thank you.
Stick to our minutes. So I don't know if there's any questions or if...
Questions for anyone in the presentation team? Seeing none? Oh, one there. Corbin?
So there was talk about 7th through 10th grade depression screenings, and if a student was found to have depression, steps would be taken. I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit on what those steps would look like, what the teacher, parents, and student would see.
Sure. Thanks for that question, Corbin. What we would do is there's cut scores on the depression screener. So if they would screen out with a certain score, we kind of triage. So kids that were really at risk, we would make sure that we got them from their next classroom, sat down and talked with them, called their parents, and developed a safety plan. For kids that were less at risk but were just showing some signs, we made a phone call home and talked to their parents. But for everyone that met a certain criteria, we called all the parents.
Thank you.
Any of the presenters? Seeing none, well, thank you very much. We always love to hear from you, so we
Thank you.
appreciate for the update. And thank you for being here tonight. I'm glad the dental floss didn't come on. Well, thank you so much. And now we'll move on in the reports section to 6C, which are announcements from Superintendent Thane.
Thank you. First and foremost, I would like to recognize senior counselor from Sentinel High School, Erica Zins, who was recognized as Montana's Counselor of the Year and recently was recognized in Washington, D.C. So we appreciate the service of all of our counselors, and Erica represents us very well, and we're very proud of her accomplishment in that recognition. We also, this past weekend at State Swim Meet, had quite an accomplishment in that the Hellgate girls and Hellgate boys swim teams both won their 5th consecutive state swimming championship. So again, remarkable performance, and to sustain that year after year is a credit to the team and to Coach Helen Houlihan. In terms of the calendar, a number of events coming up. Next Monday, February 19th, we'll be celebrating President's Day, and all schools and administrative offices will be closed. The Board of Trustees will be busy over the course of the next month. Next Tuesday, February 20th, we'll have a special board meeting, which will be a work session from 6 to 8 p.m. in this room. Thursday, February 22nd, we'll continue our trustee building visits. We'll see the middle schools, Porter, Meadow Hill, and Washington. Tuesday, February 27th, we'll have the regular board meeting, again, 6 to 8 p.m. in this room. Then Wednesday, March 7th, we'll take trustee building visits to Jefferson, where our early learning program, and Dickinson, where our adult education program are housed. So both ends of the spectrum. It's hard to believe, but it was referenced earlier in Brandon's report that we will be reaching the conclusion of the next trimester and quarter, and parent-teacher conferences K-8 will be held Thursday, March 8th, and Friday, March 9th is the scheduled day per calendar. Most schools trade March 9th for evening sessions that will be held that week. It's hard to believe we've reached that point of the school year. We'll then have another round of trustee building visits mid-March, Thursday, March 16th, Russell, Chief Charlo, and Cold Springs. With that, I'll conclude my report.
Thank you. And now we move on to 6D, which are any announcements from trustees. Any announcements? Trustee Wake and then Trustee Kendall, and then I'll look down this.
I just wanted to say that on Super Bowl weekend, I was in Washington, D.C. talking to our congressional delegation, and that we discussed such topics as the Perkins money for CTE and special education funding, which we'd like to see funded at the full 40% that they have promised us. And they're looking at a bill to, I forget what it's called, the neutrality one for the net neutrality. They're trying to pass a voting on that. I have been working with Mr. Burfine at Sentinel High School. I asked his 3 government classes to provide me with a question that I can present to each of the congressional delegation, and they got answers from each of the congressional delegation, which I will present to them on Friday when I go to speak to 3 classes of government. So.
And thanks for your service as the president of the statewide school board association. Trustee Kendall?
Thank you. Welcome back. We missed our chair, Marcia Holland, for one of our meetings, which is a very rare occurrence because Marcia's in such good health generally, but Vice Chair Diane Lorenzen did a fantastic job. stepping in, so that was good. I do want to give a really quick report on the state negotiated rule committee for accreditation standard changes for suicide prevention and response. That's a mouthful. Superintendent Thane told me about this committee that was being put together, a statewide committee. There were about 15 members. I was pleased and privileged to be part of it. There were 2 meetings. One was in December. The weather was terrible, so I didn't drive over to Helena. I participated on the phone. The second meeting and final meeting was January 30th, and there were about 15 or 16 members of the committee from all over the state. We did really quick work. There were a lot of, not a lot, there were probably 6 OPI staff people who were there to help staff the committee, and there was a facilitator hired to walk us through the work that we had to do. And just to make a long story short, the work that we're doing here is, head and shoulders above most of the state, I will say, so we can feel really good about that in our suicide prevention work across the district. The main things that the group did were talk about how the regulation should be created for implementation by OPI. And this is one step in the process. There was an economic impact survey done of all the schools in the state. The response rate was not fantastic, but most people said that they could implement the regulations as described in a summary without too much expense. And so we came up with an agreement that's very broad about how suicide prevention should be done across the state. Our work will be forwarded to Superintendent Arntzen, and from there it will go to the Board of Public Education, and then it will go to the Interim Education Committee, and it should be adopted by next summer. That's my report.
Thank you.
It was really interesting.
And thanks for your service as well. Any other announcements from any trustees? Seeing none, then we'll move on to number 7, which is the consent agenda. This is a mechanism by which the trustees can make decisions on routine matters that come before the board every month, which means that if they're placed on the consent agenda, there won't be any discussion by board members, although we do take public comment. If any trustee does want to have discussion about any of the items listed on the consent agenda, they can ask to have them taken off the consent agenda, but there hasn't been a request tonight. There's one item which is an elementary action item only, since I noticed the students were all elementary students, and it is to approve the MCPS students' attendance agreements. These are a list of students who are residents of our district who are requesting to attend other school districts. And the school districts require notification of the approval of our Board of Trustees to complete the application process. And so is there a motion to approve the attached list of students requesting to attend other school districts by an elementary trustee? Moved by trustee Decker, seconded by trustee Lorenzen. As I indicated, we won't be having any trustee discussion, but is there any public comment? Seeing none, then all elementary trustees in favor of approving the attached list of the students requesting to attend other school districts, please indicate by raising your hand. And that is unanimous as to all elementary trustees present. Then we move on to 8A, which is A1, which is to approve the second reading of our Board Policy 2145, which is suicide awareness and prevention. Mark, I don't know if you want to provide the introduction.
As you're all aware, Board Policy 2145 came before the trustees. It had been reviewed previously by council and administration. The trustees had recommended some changes which were incorporated, and the policy came back a second time for first reading. Upon its passage by the trustees, it was posted for public comment. No public comment was received during the public comment period, so the policy is before you tonight with a recommendation from the administration for formal adoption of Board Policy 2145, Suicide Awareness and Prevention.
things. Are there any questions of Superintendent Thane before I entertain any motions? Seeing none, then is there a motion? Oh, question? Sure.
I don't have a question, I do have a comment. Should I? Okay.
Just to explain, if there's questions to be clarified before someone makes a motion, it helps the person making the motion understand what they might want to make a motion about. Once there's a motion on the table, it means it's an action item, in which case that's when the deliberations and comments happen, because that's when the public has an opportunity to hear what the trustees are thinking about the motion that's pending. So just to kind of explain why there's a distinction between those two things. So is there a motion to adopt Board Policy 2145? Moved by Trustee Kendall. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Decker and Trustee Brigstad. And so now is the time for any public comment that anyone would like to make. And Trustee Kendall, would you like?
Yeah, as I said earlier in my comment, we are really doing great work in the district, and I'm really happy about that. It's still good to have this new policy, which is an improvement over our old policy, so it's all good. There was one comment that came from a parent back in January, just so it doesn't, so the record doesn't say that no public comment was received at all, right?
Just to clarify, that public comment came in through normal public comment as opposed to public comment on this topic specifically. But it was addressing this topic specifically,
well,
so it was a little confusing.
Yeah, and interestingly, if you will indulge me for a moment, this parent did call me in my work job and said, I see that there's a new suicide prevention policy proposed. How do I comment on it? And I said, go to public comment, because I thought that was how you did it. So that was how she sent it in. But it was interesting that her comment, and I didn't know her, but her comment was about later school start times, was one of the things that she mentioned that we should do in addition to the work that we're doing here. And she talked about some of the things that we just heard from the Wellness Committee about, that nutrition and physical activity are also critically important, and that's true. I agree with that. And I liked her comment. I thought it was right on.
Any other public comment? Or any other board comment, sorry. Any public comment? Seeing none, then we have a motion on the table, so all trustees in favor of adopting Board Policy 2145, which is titled Suicide Awareness and Prevention, please indicate by raising your hand. And that is unanimous as to all trustees present. Thank you so much, and thanks for the work for the administration and our legal counsel for working with us on making the modifications we'd requested. Then we move on to 9A1, which I understand Julie's going to do some introductions. So, Mrs. Robitaille?
Good evening. Thanks for allowing us to present tonight. I'm Julie Robitaille, Executive Regional Director, who has the privilege of working with Washington Middle School as one of my schools, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you tonight Casey Laslovich. She is in her first year as principal at Washington, and this is her first presentation in front of the board. She's going to be speaking to you about Washington and where Washington's future lies within the 5-year strategic plan that the visual still hangs behind you, specifically the learning quadrant and Washington's plan to build our K-12 pathway. Casey?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. So as Washington leadership team and staff prepare for the incoming 2018-19 students, our priority is to meet the needs of all learners that enter our building. Next year, Washington will have a unique group of students entering our school. These include Rattlesnake students, Lewis and Clark students with international baccalaureate experience, and Paxton students from the dual language immersion program. As a team, we have decided that it is in the best interest of all students at Washington to apply to be an IB candidate school. IB will provide all students with a continued rigorous educational experience, an emphasis on global citizenship, opportunities to work within the community, and Spanish language acquisition opportunities. Participation in the IB program does require hiring a half-time IB coordinator. The purpose of the IB coordinator is to support staff through a complex educational change, collaboratively plan with staff, and provide challenging professional development to our already outstanding staff. We would appreciate your approval of this halftime IB coordinator for the 2018-19 school year as requested in the personnel report. Early identification of the coordinator will allow us to secure appropriate training for this individual during the spring and summer months. Thank you.
Thanks. This is information only, but are there any questions for Julie, for Casey? Trustee Lorenzen?
Well, this is a concern I've had since the push for IB started. They talk about an IB pathway K-12, but Missoula is a large district, and we have 3 high schools. 2 are IB high schools, 1 is not. And I think a large portion of the kids coming through Lewis and Clark, through Washington, would go then to Sentinel. I personally don't want to see pressure on Sentinel to become an IB high school, and Hellgate is getting full of kids that are naturally attending Hellgate. So I think you have to prepare your kids that they may need to go to Big Sky. I think you need to start, or we need to figure this out. I think we've sort of backdoored this promise of a K-12 pathway that was never designed around Missoula and how Missoula works. So I think that it's important that kids don't expect that an IB experience from K to 8 gives them an automatic entrance into Hellgate High School, because Hellgate has kids that need to go to school there. They live there. And also I think that kids shouldn't expect now that Sentinel will adopt IB so that they can continue this IB thing. That's my concern.
Okay.
Sure. And I appreciate your comment, Trustee Lorenzen. I think that what intrigues me about the proposal that's coming from Washington is that they recognize that they have a diverse group of learners coming to Washington, and their intent, as I understand it, is to focus solely on meeting the outcomes for all students and making sure that they all have the opportunities to continue to grow and flourish. And recognizing that we have students that will come from 3 different feeder schools and with a variety of different experiences, I think that the plan that the staff is crafting certainly has the greatest potential to reach all learners. And so when Casey and Julie approached me with that proposal, I certainly would lend it my support. I agree that I don't think that this should necessarily apply pressure to Sentinel in any way, shape, or form to consider an IB program. But it's really about meeting the needs of the current 5th graders and those that follow that will soon be transitioning into Washington Middle School.
Thanks, Casey. I appreciate your presentation, and I'm glad that Washington School, as a group, it seems, has taken this step forward, is moving in this direction. I appreciate that it means that extra training for the teachers, I'm sure, and even some extra work. But I think that the kids are really going to be the ones that benefit from this. And with Trustee Lorenzen's comment notwithstanding, I'm not so sure that we have that problem yet, if of people telling us what we want. I mean, if for some reason Sentinel did decide to go IB, and if the district decided to go that way, then we could certainly look at that point. I don't think we should say yes or no at this point. But I do think that regardless of where those kids end up in high school, I think that they're going to get a better middle school education out of it, and I think that's the most important thing. And I just, my one question to you is I would ask, was this, you had mentioned the team approach. This has probably been in discussion for years, I would imagine, yay or nay, or maybe we will, maybe we won't. Was it is the whole staff kind of involved in this? Is it a staff decision? Is it a top-down decision? And were parents involved, PTAs, and kind of just let us know a little bit about getting to the point where you are now.
Yeah, so it was a staff decision. We knew, we've known what was coming to us for years now, like you said, so it's not like this is the first time we've discussed this. Starting at the beginning of the year, something that was really important to me is finding a way to find an equal education for every kid that walks in our door. And so I originally presented this idea to Julie and Elise, asking if they would be agree with us going that route if I could have opportunities to talk to staff, and staff agreed that this was the best route. And so in an informal survey, 99% of staff agreed that this was a better route to support all students.
Fantastic, thank you.
Oh, yeah. And then, so right now, since the beginning of October, we've been going through a feasibility study. And so just trying to educate our teachers and staff on IB background knowledge, what it looks like for change within the building. I've been working with a consultant, not a consultant, but a representative from IB, Bob Poole, who's kind of helped lead through this. I mean, Elise has been at IB schools, so being able to use her as a resource. I presented this to the Washington PTA last couple weeks ago, actually, and they're definitely in favor of it. So we'll continue. We're gonna look at training at the beginning of March and wrapping up our feasibility study.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thanks. I think over the past few years, we've definitely heard from parents from the elementary schools who have been very enthusiastic about dual language and about IB, and very concerned that the district be acting to make sure that their kids continue to have those types of experiences that are encompassed in this 21st century model of learning that we've been talking about and that the district's been moving toward. And so kudos for taking on this big project. It's obviously, these things don't happen quickly. They take a lot of work, and there's a lot of bumps along the way. So way to go. I do just want to take the opportunity to say that we just heard from the Wellness Committee about some of the disparities between our high wealth and low wealth schools. And I think it's important to notice that the schools that were early adopters of these programs are now at a point of graduating kids and families who are used to that type of educational process. And for schools that have not yet adopted those types of programs, that's still years down the road. Speaking of what's coming down the pike, though, for high schools and future programming, Franklin's adopted IB and is going to be moving that direction too. So it's there are lots of these efforts underway, and when families and kids experience learning that's more connected, that's more global, that's more focused, that's more authentic, that's more project-based, blah, 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 all of those things, they don't want to go back, and they will advocate for them. And so we do very much need to be ready and aware and making sure that all kids across the district have that equity is one of our focuses.
Casey, I feel like I have a good understanding, or somewhat good understanding, of what IB looks like at the high school level, because there's the diploma program if students opt into that, but then there's other classes available to those students who aren't opting into the diploma program. And we've seen what it looks like at the elementary level, but can you talk about what it looks like at the middle school level?
So
is it certain classes?
Elementary is a little, they're not certain classes. All kids will be offered the same classes. The MYP, the middle years program, has recently been adjusted. It still does look a little more like the PYP for the primary years program. There's one interdisciplinary unit that it needs to be designed by staff. We will apply as an individual school. And so we will do a community project, which is students research ways in how they can work in the community or support the community, and this is kind of their final project that they will complete as an 8th grader. A lot of inquiry-based, bringing in that global piece of learning to kids. So I would say that it's a little more designed like a PYP because it does give all students similar opportunities.
Thank you for your information.
Thank
and
you.
Any public comment? It's information only, but I don't know if there's public comment.
Good evening. I'm Susan Anderson. I'm principal of Lewis and Clark Elementary. We are an International Baccalaureate Primary Years program. I am here in support of Washington Middle School and their request to you tonight. I'm just reminding you of a letter that our PTA sent April 22nd, 2016. Dear MCPS board members, trustees, Lewis and Clark Elementary School PTA is committed to making our schools the best possible environment for our kids, teachers, staff, and community members. The PTA fully supports our teachers and staff as they implement the Primary Year's International Baccalaureate Program, which we view as critical to fulfilling our school's mission. The IB program at the elementary school level has improved and enriched the lives of our kids, and we are just beginning to see those benefits of developing knowledge, independent thinking, and cultural awareness. We very much appreciate the continuing investment of the board in the IB program, including the funding of our Spanish language program. We are an immersion school. Working together, Lewis and Clark has been successful in introducing and integrating Spanish language into our children's academic and cultural education. We look forward to our children taking their IB traditions of learning to Washington Middle School and beyond. Now remember, this letter comes from 2 years ago. Thank you for your commitment to the students of Missoula. We welcome the opportunity to work with you to provide the best possible learning experiences for kids entering Washington Middle School. And I do need to make a correction. We're not an immersion school. We are an exposure school. So we do offer Spanish to all of our students, but it is not immersion. It is just on a special schedule where they have Spanish every third day, probably about 2 times a week. So. Thank you.
Comment on this item? Thanks. Well, seeing none, thank you for being here, and we'll move on to 9A2, which is an elementary action item. And Karen, if you want to stay there, it looks like there is an application to obtain 1 class at a time, $250 grant, and it's to provide relevant materials to help kids learn. So
yes, thank you. I want to have a rememory of Kate Beals. Kate Beals was known as Aka around many of the elementary schools in Missoula, and Kate Beals was one of our Native American specialists, and she started a program that we call the Read Aloud program. And what happens is that our Native American specialists read Native American literature to K-2 classrooms in all Missoula schools. And so Kathy Sehos has taken that idea, and with the support, we believe, of the 1 class at a time, this will be a way to purchase some new Native American literature to be read in the Read Aloud program. So we will keep Kate's tradition going.
Any questions for Karen? See none, then is there, sure, question.
It's just a question about the grant itself. It says each week during the school year, one of these awards will be given out from KPAX, which is Missoula. Is this a statewide grant?
No, this is actually the KPAX one class at a time. So they do give 1 a week.
Of the chief. I just wondering.
Not to us, to somebody.
To somebody. Okay. Statewide.
In Missoula.
In Missoula. Okay. I'm just wondering why we haven't seen it before, if it's something they're giving out every week. We see this one all the time.
Yeah. Although oftentimes those grants are submitted without a grant form coming to the district. It's a less formal grant process. But you see the weekly broadcasts on KPAX of many of our teachers actually receiving the KPAX 1 class at a time grants.
Any other questions of Karen? Seeing none, is there a motion from an elementary trustee to approve the grant application? Moved by trustee Smith. Is there a second? Second by trustee Newbold. Any board discussion? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, then all elementary trustees in favor of approving the grant application, please indicate by raising your hand. And that is unanimous as to all elementary trustees present. Thank you very much. And now we move on to 9B1, which is permission to seek quotes for student and staff device replacements. And Ray, I know we see this every year, and I understand from prior years although not everyone understands this, but there is a cooperative through which we can actually get some financial benefits. So if you want to explain what this request is about, that would be great.
Certainly. So tonight I'm asking to replace about 900 devices. It's 712 student devices and 186 staff devices that are on a 5-year cycle. We do reap those benefits by purchasing from a cooperative because we get the bottom price from those cooperatives. So those companies say this is our bottom line, and then we can purchase through those cooperatives. So tonight I'm just requesting permission to seek quotes from different vendors, and once we receive those quotes, my team and I will assess them, and then I'll come back to you to ask permission to purchase.
Any questions for Ms. Cooper? See none. And just, I have one question. So as I recall from past consideration of this, there are times when different vendors might get different aspects, some Chromebooks, some MacBooks, some, so it's not saying that one vendor will get everything, but you and your team will work with the co-op to get the best prices for each type of item.
Most certain, yes, definitely. It depends on, what the vendors have. Some vendors will even put our base image on the machine at a cheap price, which saves us time, and we can get those devices out quicker. So it just depends on, we might buy Chromebooks here, Dells here, HPs here, depending.
And any other questions? So there is a request. Let me see if I can get the right wording.
It's on the top of the next page.
Okay, nope, it's actually, there we go. So the request is that the trustees grant permission to seek quotes for student and staff device replacements under the process that Ms. Cooper has just outlined. Is there such a motion? Moved by trustee Breakstead. Is there a second? Seconded by trustee Decker. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Seeing none, then all trustees in favor of granting permission for the district to seek quotes for the student and staff device replacements, please indicate by raising your hand. That is unanimous as to all trustees present, and thank you for being here tonight. Now moving on to C, the personnel negotiations and policy section. One is to approve the personnel report. The report is found on page 45. Is there anything you'd like to point out, Dave, in terms of the report?
It's an ordinary report. I would just mention, as Ms. Laslovich stated, on the elementary certified personnel report, there is an authorized FTE for half-time IB coordinator at Washington. It's effective for the 2018-2019 school year, and it's just on there in advance so we can go ahead and get that process started so they can have a person in place to be able to attend trainings as they occur later this spring.
Any questions of Dave? Trustee Smith?
Just a quick question on that, Dave. Is that, I assume that is going to be someone from within, is not going to be someone with any kind of special skills or certification already that we have to bring in from outside? Is that correct?
No, we'll advertise for that position, but it won't be anybody, it would just be under the same general job description we have for other IB coordinators in the district.
But people from within can apply for it?
Absolutely, yes, that's correct.
Any other questions first? Seeing none, then is there, whoops, let me get back to my page. Is there a motion to approve the items on the provided personnel report? Moved by trustee Kendall, seconded by trustee Newbold. Is there any board discussion? Trustee Lorenzen?
I know we have to be careful around the personnel report. I'm concerned about the proliferation of these IB coordinator positions. I just feel like the camel got its nose under the tent and push, push, push. Now we're up to, I think, 4 FTE in the elementary, or 4, but anyway, it's adding up to a lot of money. And I don't think that we're being frugal. I think we talk about how we're short of money, but here we are adding a halftime position that's not a classroom position. I know there's a halftime, I don't know what there is, but it just keeps coming. The push for IB just keeps coming. The amount of money just keeps building, and we've never really sat down and said, should we be paying for this? And looked at the full-on cost. So for that reason, I'm going to vote against the personnel report.
Thanks. And trustee Smith?
I just want to comment on trustee Lorenzen's comment saying that I don't think this is just a matter of spending money for spending money's sake. I think that this money is well spent and that the kids are getting a better education overall out of all this, this particular program especially. And I am voting for this.
Thanks. Any other board comment? We do have a seconded motion, right? Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we're at that stage. Okay. Any other board discussion? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Seeing none, then all trustees in favor of approving the items on the provided personnel report, please indicate by raising your hand. And that is trustee Smith, Breakstead, Holland, Duggar, Decker, Kendall, Newbold, and Wake. All those opposed? Trustee McDonald and trustee Lorenzen. And so the motion passes and it is approved. Then we move on to C2, which is a request for exception to Board Policy 3110, which is entrance, placement, and transfer. And Mrs. Allen, it looks like there are, we kind of see these almost anticipatorily because
Yes,
we're not really at
that's
that age yet.
exactly why. When we have an influx of students, especially students from other countries, we have a real need to be able to assure them that high school will be there for them for their whole 4 years. So typically we bring a student who's on the just at 19, but in this case we're bringing these two students so that we can assure them that high school will be there for them the whole 4 years.
Any questions for Mrs. Allen? Seeing none, then is there a motion to grant the waiver of an age limitation for students identified as SW and MW? Moved by trustee Wake, seconded by trustee Decker and trustee Breakstead. Any board discussion? Trustee Breakstead?
I know I said this last time that we had to do this, but I think it bears repeating that we are a state that is the worst at this. We're the only state where we punish kids for trying to get back into school when they're already at a certain age. So that's something that the Montana State Legislature needs to fix.
Thank you. Any other board comment? I was just going to say it's nice to be able to assure students that they will be able to graduate from school even if they happen to turn 19 or 20 just in that process, so.
Just for the record, I want to echo.
Okay, turn your mic on and identify yourself.
So this is trustee Duggar, and I just want to echo trustee Bragstad's comments on this. It's something that we need to support on the record to get the legislature to act, definitely.
Any other board comment? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, then all trustees in favor of granting the waiver of age limitation for the students identified as SW and MW, please indicate by raising your hand. That is all trustees present. And then we move on to C3, which is an elementary action item, and it is to approve an age waiver for one student, CS, who would like to be admitted to early admission for kindergarten. And so if you want to just give us any.
Yes. Actually, this is a student who just came from another state where they have a different admission date that's later than ours. So we have become so aware of the date and the expectation that we bring each student who meets that criteria to the board for approval. That's why we're here. Technically, the young man didn't arrive in Missoula in time for us to get A and B for him, unfortunately, but we're just dotting our I's and crossing our T's here.
And I would just add one comment, and that is our board policy actually states that for transfer students who have begun in another school system, we will admit them. So this student has actually begun school, but in order to be consistent with all early admits, we did want to bring it to the board's attention. And as Karen referenced, were it prior to the count date, we would be required to demonstrate in board minutes that you took action to admit in order for us to collect A and B for that particular student.
Any questions for Superintendent Thayer, Mrs. Allen? Seeing none, then is there a motion to approve the age waiver for student CS from an elementary trustee. Moved by trustee Decker and seconded by trustee Smith. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Seeing none, then all elementary trustees in favor of approving the age waiver for the student identified as CS, please indicate by raising your hand. And that is all trustees, elementary trustees present. Thank you. Now we move on to number 4, which is to approve the first reading of a revision to Board Policy 2160, Federal Funding and Title I. And so Superintendent Thane, it looks like this is an update that was suggested at the request of Board Council.
Yes, actually, you'll recall when we met at Seeley Swan High School in October, you reviewed 2 policies that were associated with Title I and with the McKinney-Vento Act. This is an additional policy that's required, and there are actually 2 items that I'd like to mention to you. First, beginning on page 56, is the policy as it's currently written and adopted. What's important is on page 58, there's an attendant procedure statement that's listed as Board Policy 2160P. What you'll be asked to take action on tonight is really found on page 59, which is the red-lined version, printed in black and white, which references the changes that are being recommended to policy. So there is some language that's a little bit dated that's found in second paragraph of the policy that we would like to delete. Then when you get to the last paragraph, there's a statement about parental involvement. And we'll clean up some language there with regard to district school. And there's a reference to a procedure statement on parent involvement, which is included. That referenced 2160P. We're actually, on advice of council, going to recommend that the trustees pull 2160P at a future date, and we'll actually come back to you with an additional policy, which will be 2159, that will be updated to reflect current practice and procedure with regard to parent involvement in Title I. So the final paragraph of the policy is completely struck through on page 59 because we'll be coming forward with the new policy at next month's meeting. Finally, the legal references have been altered because we're no longer referencing No Child Left Behind, but we'll reference instead ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. So the recommendation this evening is that you adopt the revisions to Board Policy 2160 with the understanding that we'll come back next month with Board Policy 2159 to deal with the parent involvement requirements.
And just to make sure, to clarify that, since this is a board policy, it's the first reading, so we're actually not adopting it at this meeting, but we are saying that we are adopting the first reading of it, which allows us to put it out for public comment and then to allow for further consideration in a second reading. So at this point, it is for the first reading of the revision to Board Policy 2160, which actually is found on page 59. And the other 2 documents are there for reference to see what we're modifying this policy from. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So any questions for Superintendent Thane about the recommendation? Seeing none, then is there a motion that the trustees approve the first reading of the revision to Board Policy 2160, which is titled Federal Funding in Title I, and authorize it for posting for public comment? Moved by trustee Wake. Is there a second? Seconded by trustee Lorenzen. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Seeing none, then all trustees in favor of approving for the first reading of the revision of Board Policy 2160 and authorizing it to be posted for public comment, please indicate by raising your hand. And that is unanimous as to all trustees present. And with that, we reach number 10 on the agenda, which is public comment on non-agenda items. If anyone wasn't able to make the beginning of the meeting, we allow a second opportunity for public comment on non-agenda items. So if anyone has any comment on non-agenda items, the same process we'd ask to follow, just come to the podium and provide your comments. And seeing none, then item number 11 is that we're adjourned. So thank you very much. Thank you all for being here.